Many of these graphics, I think you would agree, are beautiful and aesthetically pleasing. But are they art? Well, defining what is and is not art is definitely beyond the scope of this class. But I would argue that being art and being beautiful is not the first calling of this type of work. An infographic should first and foremost be understandable and communicate effectively and clearly. Of course, there are also some gray areas. Stephanie Posovic is a fantastic designer whom I had the pleasure to meet at the Information Graphics Conference Malafiche in Pamplona, Spain, where we were both speakers and judges. Her work uses data, but, as she explained in her presentation, more as a framework, as a focused set of limitations to ultimately create works of art. This piece, for example, analyzes Kerouac's On the Road, creating branches for every major theme throughout the book. The piece is meant to be consumed as art, and therefore does not succeed or fail on its ability to be the most clear communicator of the subject matter. There is nothing wrong with this approach, and I respect the work greatly, but it's important, I believe, to take note of this distinction. In this class, we're focused on using visual language as a communication tool, as the shortest distance between the data and understanding, and not as a means toward an aesthetic solution. I'm not going to teach you to make art with data. I'm going to teach you how to communicate effectively with information and data. Our information designs ultimately have to function in this goal to communicate. I'm a great fan of mid-century furniture design, which I find to be simultaneously beautiful and functional. They have beautiful line and proportion, but at the end of the day, you have to be able to sit in them, and they have to hold the weight of the sitter and be relatively comfortable and ergonomic. In fact, their beauty is a direct result of this functionality, and for me this is great inspiration when creating graphics. You have to be able to sit in your graphic, and it has to support the weight. In other words, it must stand up to the weight of its responsibility to communicate effectively, clearly, and honestly. When done well, the result can be very pleasing aesthetically too. In other words, infographics should adhere to the common phrase, form follows function. This was originally coined by the American architect Louis Sullivan. The original quote reads, "Whether it be the sweeping eagle in his flight, or the open apple blossom, the toiling workhorse, the blithe swan, the branching oak, the winding stream at its base, the drifting clouds, over all the coursing sun, form ever follows function, and this is the law. Where function does not change, form does not change. The granite rocks, the ever-brooding hills remain for ages. The lightning lives, comes into shape, and dies in a twinkling." We might also want to consider the thoughts of a student of Sullivan's, a gentleman some of you may have heard of, Frank Lloyd Wright. He famously stated, "Form follows function. That has been misunderstood. Form and function should be one, joined in a spiritual union." The aesthetic choices you make in your graphics should be made in the service of the function of that graphic, and the function should similarly inform those aesthetic choices. It's a delicate balance, and the best graphics are the ones that achieve this. Coming from a journalism background, the moral obligation that comes with visual communication is something I consider especially, but I believe anyone designing to communicate visually should take this seriously. For instance, when creating this infographic about the raid that captured Osama bin Laden for the front page of the Times, it was important to be very clear about what we did and did not know. And at the time, the details were still very sketchy. So rather than create something with too much realism, I decided on a more diagrammatic style that would hopefully convey where we had more information and where we had less. Your graphics and visualizations should also be subject to the "so what" test. It can be tempting to visualize a subject simply because it can be done. New tools allow us to create increasingly complex visualizations, but there should be a reason why you've decided to use a particular visual language to tell the story. The visualization of the topic should say something and clarify something that simply telling could not otherwise accomplish. There are many data visualizations out there that look impressive, but on further scrutiny, may not be so good at telling us something new or interesting about the subject matter. Take this graphic by Aaron Koblin showing flight patterns across the United States. It's clearly a beautiful project, but does it pass the so what test? There aren't annotations or necessarily clear patterns revealed to me personally, so I'm not sure what this graphic ultimately communicates. On the other hand, to another audience, for instance one with more expertise about flight patterns, this may be more revealing. Knowing your audience is incredibly important when designing. And once your audience is known and well considered, it's important to apply the so what test to your work, and to make sure that your subject matter will be clarified by your decision to use a visual approach in your communication. Hopefully now you understand a little bit more about our topic than you did before, so let's quickly review our 9 tenets of information design and visualization. Design humanistically. Don't just tell when you can show. Seeing leads to understanding. Provide insight and clarity. Communicate effectively. Form follows function. Communicate honestly. Apply the so what test. Know your audience. Now that you have a bird's eye view of the field, we'll turn our attention to how to get started. Specifically, the next lesson begins to get into the visual design principles you'll need to understand in order to design effective information graphics and visualizations. Having an understanding of how your design decisions will be absorbed by your audience will help you to communicate effectively. The first assignment is a quiz. Each lesson in the course has one, and it's designed to help you reinforce the concepts covered in the lesson. Quizzes are available on the Classroom site after this video is done. For assignment 2, find 3 examples of an information graphic or data visualization online and identify how effective you believe it is and why, referencing the tenets we have learned in the lesson. After you've finished your assignment, post a link to it in the Classroom and then find one of your classmates' assignments and take some time to look it over and offer feedback. That's it for now. I'll see you in the next lesson.